Yo, 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 good morning. Grateful for another maggot-free day above the dirt. Jersey Shore, check it out. So, this video is moving on from where we left off, which was revisiting the first foundation of mindfulness, but in the context of the sense doors and our contact with the material world, and how that contact initiates a process which we want to be aware of and grounded in, but we don't want to be swept away in the content. And if you missed that video, please go back, because that's really vital to understanding how we actually redirect the mind and don't get attached to pursuing pleasure and avoiding pain and improper thinking and subtle false refuge and false refuge and all of that. So if you missed all that, go back and check that out, please. It'll make this video make a lot more sense, and you'll see the linear track I'm on with all this stuff. So I'm not going to go deep into the other three or the next two foundations of mindfulness, which are mindfulness of feelings and mindfulness of mind state. I am going to get into the fourth foundation because I haven't recently touched on that in this video series, because there was a lot I wanted to cover before. So I think I'm ready to touch on that now. So like I just said, the second foundation is mindfulness of feelings, and the third is of mind states. So what happens, and really, even though it's a linear process, it's also a circular process where, it's almost as if all these states happen instantaneously. That's how quick they're linked together. Excuse me. So the first foundation of mindfulness is form. We make contact with the material world, and it triggers physical sensations. The second is, what are the feelings that these sensations give rise to? The third is, what is the mind state that rises from the sense door contact, from the feeling? Now, what is the mind state that rises? So, as I've already said with each, when I focused on each one, the purpose of mindfulness is to deconstruct the experience and see the interconnectedness of it with all conditions, to see how it's temporary and impermanent, and to see how it only exists because it's dependent on certain conditions, and that when the conditions change, the experience changes. Again, doesn't mean we don't deal with it, doesn't mean it's not real, it just means that it's not fixed and permanent, and we don't have to identify with it and attach to it. We just deal with it and let it come and go without trying to prematurely end it or abnormally prolong it. So with all this in mind, we get to the fourth foundation of mindfulness. Now, the first three are about, here in a nutshell is what the first three are about. To realize I am not my body, to realize I am not my feelings, and to realize I am not my thoughts. This is important. It doesn't mean they're not my thoughts in the sense of I'm having them, or it's not to say I'm not having these feelings or having these physical sensations. Of course I am. It's my own unique personal experience. It just means that I don't need to completely identify my definition of self based on them. Because when I do, I create this fixed permanent construct of self that gets stuck and can't ebb and flow and transform and evolve, right? How can we transform anything that we believe to be fixed and permanent? So, and I talked about this already, about letting go, and the true liberation we're looking for is to just let go of the identification with the construct we've created. Let go of the identification with the conditions that we've now identified with as inherent in us when they're not, right? So, but the fourth foundation is a little different because it's really bringing our mindfulness to the Dharma, to the teachings, to the truth of the teachings, and all other events and phenomena. So we're now seeing that life itself we need to have a perspective the same way we do with I'm not my body, I'm not my feelings, and I'm not my mind. We have to have a perspective that life itself, the nature of existence, is temporary, impermanent. There's nothing fixed about it, and everything we experience is dependent on other conditions, right? So the process, again, is what we're focused on. It doesn't mean we ignore the content. Now is the time we investigate the content, but we realize that the content is temporary, impermanent, and we deal with it in the relative sense because that's life. We deal with our lives. We deal with the situations. We deal with their consequences. We deal with their results. And but we don't get bogged down in it and attached and suffer over it. We realize that life is fraught with difficulty, and we deal with it. So we're not completely identified. So when the fourth foundation is we look at the content in the sense of, are we living the Dharma? Are we seeing the Dharma at work in our lives? And that's twofold. Are we seeing how the natural laws of Dharma are playing out? Interdependence, the chain of causation, the temporary nature of things. Are we seeing all that we understand about Buddhism working? In the sense of not working for us or against us, just working. The nature of it is what it is. So are we aware of how the Dharma is actualizing, how the laws of Dharma, the reality of existence, is doing what it's supposed to, like it always does? And the other side of this is to see, are we responding with the Dharma to this? Meaning that, are we present in the real-time moment? Are we responding rather than just habitually reacting? Are we creating new, healthy, wholesome thinking rather than falling back into our harmful conditioned thinking? Are we seeing through the illusion and seeing things as they are based on this understanding? Are we putting the teachings and the insight and the knowledge into action? Vitally important. Do we see that everything we're experiencing is either a result of just the Dharma unfolding as it naturally does? And do we see that everything we're experiencing is originating in our minds and our consciousness based on what we are integrating into our thinking and our consciousness? So the fourth foundation is basically saying, things are not as they seem, but they're not otherwise either. We need to deal with them, but we need to see the reality of them and see that, have a mindfulness to know when we're not mindful, and see that when we are attached and identified in an unhealthy way, and acting via the construct rather than the reality, we can say, I am not this self that I think I am. This is not life as I think it is, and see through that illusion, and be part, to use the process of what's happening now as a tool, and also to use the content as to see the content as something we do have to deal with, but to use it as a way to deepen our spiritual life. It's a teaching, right? The content now becomes our ally rather than our adversary, which is why we advocate in the first three not getting into the content. Okay, so this is, I'm going to stop there. I've gone longer than I had intended, but I hope this was helpful. Have a grateful, maggot-free day above the dirt. Peace out.